With what PJ Duke and Marcus Blaze just did at Final X, and then Masanosuke Ono coming in, there's no way you can redshirt them if you're Penn State, right? It's not as crazy of an idea as you may think it is.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State wrestling, and thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and wrestling. He is the voice of Penn State wrestling. The expert himself, Jeff Byers, returns to talk about the latest developments after Final X. We're going to talk about the best rivalry in all of wrestling right now, and it involves one of Penn State's current wrestlers. Lineup scenarios based on what would happen if you were to redshirt Blaze, Duke, Ono, what it would mean for Penn State if you did or didn't. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Jeff, I don't think it's crazy, because yes, PJ Duke, Marcus Blaze, and Masanosuke Ono would all be instant title contenders. It would still benefit Penn State to actually redshirt all three of them, because you get that extra year of development, and then you give them 4 years to go crazy at the NCAA level. I think where it does get a little tentative, where you might hesitate, is, okay, how do you juggle all of this? Because you could make the argument that it just does delay the inevitable, that these guys could surpass the current starters in this lineup in theory.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about, because you're talking about national title contenders across the board there. It's one of those things where I know people want answers and let's figure it out now. There's really no rush from the Penn State perspective, from the coaching staff's perspective. I'm sure they're going to have conversations, maybe already have had conversations with, hey, this is what we're thinking. What are you thinking? And, see how it plays out. Cael's preference has consistently been 2 redshirt wrestlers where he can in that freshman season. Now, we've had several examples where it really just made no sense to redshirt somebody, Luke Lillidahl last season, for example. And we've had several other cases where they have kind of taken the wait and see approach, and then by the time January rolls around, it becomes apparent in the room, all right, this guy is clearly more than ready to go.
Levi Haynes, for example.
With these 3 guys in particular, I don't think there's any doubt that all 3 are ready to go and ready to compete at the collegiate level. So it really becomes more about the team dynamics and kind of the long-term goals here for the program. And I think if everybody's on board, to me, it would make a lot of sense to redshirt all 3 if you can. For one thing, with Blaze with all 3, I guess. I was going to say with Blaze and Duke in particular, but all 3, they can concentrate then on the international game for the year. I think Ono, the idea of redshirting him would be more to get him familiar with Folkstyle and more comfortable with it, as well as the kind of college experience here in a foreign country for him. So I think there's a little more involved there. And to me, again, if you can, I think it makes a little more sense. Looking at the 3 and the weight classes and everything that goes into it, to me, the most likely not to redshirt would be Marcus Blaze. And, he may be the least polished, which is insane to say, because until PJ Duke and Ono's obviously a little different category here, but, it makes it sound like, yeah, this kid's raw. No, he could walk in unquestionably and win a national title. But I think, with PJ Duke winning a spot here on the world team, Ono being, a potential world gold medalist, Blaze, again, outstanding in his own right and more than ready to go. And all four are certainly or all three are certainly capable of winning national titles for every remaining season of eligibility they have. It's just that, again, you're talking about a program right now that has national title contenders pretty much up and down the lineup already.
And they could afford Penn State, not that that's, expected otherwise, but Penn State doesn't necessarily need PJ Duke for next season, Marcus Blaze for next season, or Masanosuke Ono, because remember, Braden Davis just finished top 5. Once upon a time, we'll see how Aaron Nagao continues his recovery process and everything else.
Yeah.
But I still have confidence in him because he was a former All-American once upon a time. He's just dealt with some setbacks that aren't his fault. Oh, and Tyler Kasak is already probably the national title favorite. If you ask more people, if the more people you ask, they'll say Tyler Kasak is the favorite at 157, even though there is Meyer Shapiro, Antrell Taylor, who's defending. More people are probably going to say, yeah, Kasak at 157 would be the favorite there, even though that is getting to be a more crowded weight class at 57. So Penn State can't afford it. I think where it gets tricky, particularly with PJ Duke, because you have him now at 157. I don't know that he's going to stay at 157 for very long. And then if he does redshirt, adds on the weight, well, Mitchell Mesenbrink's still there for another season. Okay, Levi Haynes leaves 174. Well, William Hankel could easily go into that spot. Maybe it's Asher Cunningham. Maybe it's Joe Seeley. So 174 doesn't really have a clear outlook either. I've seen that, hey, Mitchell Mesenbrink could bump up to 74, and then that opens up 65 for PJ Duke right away. Is Messenbrink going to be willing to do that when we're going to talk about him a little more later in the show? So with Blaze, yes, he would go right into the lineup, hypothetically, if you were to let him. Ono, I think Ono's situation does have to do, partially get him to Folkstyle, but eligibility. The NCAA only has him approved for one season. So the red shirt makes a little more sense for Ono and for Blaze, in a sense, than it does for Duke, because I think it complicates things when he's not going to stay at 157 for much longer.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. Again, sometimes these things take care of themselves. Sometimes they don't. Injuries obviously can occur. Not that obviously you're not wishing that for anybody, but that is part of the sport, and an unknown right now whether or not there's a situation that could open up and you need somebody at a particular weight. The other thing that to me is interesting. PJ Duke is obviously a phenom. What he did Saturday is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in this sport. Yeah. Not just knocking off Diakomo Hollis, but to go down 10-0 and then 9-2 after the first period of the second bout and then win that series is, I don't remember seeing anything quite like that. Certainly not with a guy with the experience and credentials of Diakomo Hollis. And it's not like PJ Duke came from nowhere. Obviously, people are very aware he's one of the top prospects for a reason. But, I think that the general thinking, and I was right there with the general thinking, is, hey, it's pretty cool that this guy got to the finals and gets an opportunity here to get a feel for a guy like Diakomo Hollis, and what a great experience this is going to be to allow him to grow. And certainly when it's down 1-0 and then in the series and 9-2 going into the second period, it's still, man, that was a great experience, great opportunity, all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden he catches another gear and does what he does. All of that being said, I don't think it's a given, Zach, that he wins a wrestle-off with Tyler Kasak. Kasak keeps getting better and better. I know, I get it. We're talking about, come on, you're talking about now a potential world champion at the very least, a world team member. I'm just telling you, that's where this room is right now, is even a world team member, and potentially, again, we'll see what he does at the world championships. But even if he wins gold, again, I don't know that I just automatically install him as the favorite, because Tyler Kasak is awfully darn good and just has that right mindset. But it's a nice situation to have on one hand, but it is very difficult on the other from a coaching staff and even from a fan perspective, because I think Tyler Kasak is, I know he's one of the fan favorites just because of how hard-nosed he is and the effort he gives every time out. And, again, he finished where he did, and that's the way that played out. I think most Penn State fans still consider him much like Levi Haynes, and I think we're seeing that. I think they were the best wrestlers at their weight class overall during the season. They just didn't come up with the wins when they needed them to get their hand raised on Saturday night at the NCAA tournament. But Penn State has probably 3 or 4 weight classes at least where you're going to have somebody that probably is capable of winning a national title this coming season that won't be in the starting lineup for one reason or another.
It's very crazy, and it leads us to some of those lineup scenarios. Okay, if you redshirt Duke and Blaze, you redshirt all 3, in theory, what would the lineups look like? Well, we started to allude to it, but let's actually get right into the depth of that conversation, and that's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. How does $200 in bonus bets sound? Well, if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. That's right, $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. You have player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You can bet on the WNBA, Major League Baseball, even in the offseason, Penn State football. Do you think their win totals are posted on FanDuel right now? Do you think they're going to have more than 10.5 wins or less than 10.5? If you like those lines, head over to FanDuel.com and you can make your wagers. Again, if you are new to FanDuel, head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets to use on everything I mentioned and more. That is over at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget, later on in the show, we are getting to what is now the best rivalry in all of wrestling, and it involves Mitchell Messenbrink. We'll leave it at that for now. The lineup scenarios. Well, Penn State, I think, Jeff, this is something that should be talked about more or focused on a lot more, is the depth. Okay, guys hey, they could win an NCAA title this season, but they might not get to because they're not even going to be in the lineup. If injuries do happen, if complications do happen, Penn State has that insurance. It's like, for example, when Shane Van Ness went down, Tyler Kasak was able to go in at 149 and finished 3rd. So Penn State's not going to lose something that, yes, you're going to lose a starter. You're going to lose a quality wrestler in theory. And I don't like to frame it that way, but that is a realistic possibility. Penn State has not only the best starting lineup, but the best depth in the entire country as well. So if Penn State were to redshirt with the intention of redshirting Blaze, Ono, and Duke, Braden Davis finished top 5. If Aaron Nagao is healthy, can easily go. And that's where I'm curious to know your input, because who do you wrestle at 133 and 141 between Blaze and Nagao? I got to say, I would assume it would be, if it would be Davis and Nagao, I would assume Nagao would be at 133 and Davis would go up to 141, or is Nagao better suited if he's fully healthy, would be better at 41? Let's start there.
Yeah, no, I think Nagao is just a more natural 33-pounder, and I think that would be my expectation. Again, no inside information there, just to be clear, but I would think Nagao would be 33, and I think Braden Davis just keeps growing. I mean, so I think, to me, he would be the more obvious choice at 141. And again, as we keep saying, but you're talking about national title contenders in every one of these names that we're throwing out there. Not saying they will win the national title, but they are among the handful of guys at each
They're
weight
in the mix.
that can certainly be there by the end of the season if they stay healthy and continue to progress and all of those things. Yeah, I mean, if all three were to redshirt, and I think that is a possibility for sure as we sit here right now, then yeah, I would think you would have Lilladall if Nagao's healthy, Aaron Nagao at 33, and then Braden Davis at 141.
Okay, so then let's say, again, I don't want to wish anything or speak it into existence, but say Nagao's still going through his recovery, might not be ready to go at the start of the season, and maybe needs some more rest time. Blazer Ono at 133 and then Davis at 141, or you could keep Davis at 133 and have one of those guys at 141. I think right now with what the situation with Ono is that it's a matter of, yes, again, getting adjusted to Folkstyle, but I do think at least there is a question with his eligibility. Until the NCAA approves more eligibility here, Penn State's best case scenario, or what it might be in the best interest for Penn State and Ono, is to in fact redshirt him so you can continue to go through that litigation process to maximize his eligibility so that he's not just a one and done wrestler, because after all, he is a former world medalist. He defeated Spencer Lee, granted in freestyle, but that's the capability of Ono. So a red shirt would significantly benefit Ono from the fact that you could get him more eligibility, you get him acclimated to Folkstyle and in the intricacies of the Penn State wrestling room, and then unleash him for potentially 2, who knows, maybe 3 or all 4 years, which would be crazy to think. So out of all the red shirts, Ono would benefit the most.
I think that's right. I think in part too, just that the whole college experience and going through that season, I know it's just a different type of grind, that college season. And I think when you're not used to it, or you haven't grown up around it and seen it, that's just it's a different experience. And I think being around it and seeing it would benefit Ono. Again, he obviously is ready to go if they needed him, or if he wants to. I mean, he can certainly go win a national title this upcoming season. But I think that's right. I think of the three, he would benefit the most from the redshirt experience, just all around. I also think it just gives him a chance to get a little more comfortable with the surroundings and the team that he's on. And I think that also would be just a benefit for him.
And the student athlete aspect of it, there's the weight cut. If he were to go at 133, he's never done that, where he's had to make weight week in, week out, be a student in all of this. So he is there with the intention to get his degree for what it is worth. Now let's go up to 157. I've seen different comments on the internet, of course, about this discourse, because it is really intriguing. It is a discussion that can go in any direction. Okay, if you start PJ Duke at 57, well, just have Tyler Kasak cut to 149. Let's just say this, it is not that simple. Okay, Tyler Kasak has become a natural 157-pounder. I can't believe it was a discussion to say that, hey, he's the 141-pounder in waiting after all of this. No, like Braden Davis, Tyler Kasak continues to get bigger, faster, stronger, but that weight cut is probably almost near impossible. So that's what some people are alluding to. Well, just have Shane Van Ness cut to 141, have Kasak cut to 149, and then PJ Duke can walk right into 157. And then you have Blaze start at 133 or Braden Davis. It is not as easy as it sounds just to have everybody cut weight and move down a spot.
Yeah, and those guys are disciplined enough that they probably could do it and make weight. The question is, how effective can you be over the course of, again, the grind that a college season is? And, significant weight cuts do take a toll on your body. So I think, if a scenario, first of all, let me say, I don't think that scenario plays out. But if it were, I think those guys would need – I think you would have to do more juggling of the lineup. I think you would have to give some breaks, some weekends off to guys making the type of cut that would be required for Kasak to get down to 49 and Van Ness to 41 to try to allow them to hold up, to allow their bodies to hold up and perform the way they would want to and the team would want them to in March.
Where the lineup scenario gets tricky for Duke is the future. It's not necessarily this season because, okay, you have Duke Redshirt. Okay, nothing changes there in the middleweights. Kasak's 57, Mesenbrink is 65, and Haynes is 74. Where it gets tricky is that if Mesenbrink was finished, Haynes was finished, okay, you have that opening, but you don't. And I'm not complaining from Penn State's point of view. Yes, you want Mitchell Mesenbrink to come back because he is a Hodge Trophy contender, maybe a favorite for next season, not just a title contender, a title favorite at 65. But PJ Duke doesn't just walk into a starting spot after going through that redshirt season. So do you bulk him all the way up to 174 and enter a potentially, I mean, we could talk about a competition between Henkel, Sealy. I'm crazy enough to still believe that Josh Barr could cut down to 84 if he would want to. And then Rocco Welsh has talked about going to this. These are things that they have said. Rocco Welsh has gone on the record to say that I would wrestle at 79 kilos in freestyle, which is the equivalent of roughly 174 in theory for the folk style part of it in college. Just saying. So you could be in a four-way battle at 174 if Duke were to all the way jump up. So Mitchell Mesenbrink could do the simple thing, bump up to 174, but his weight class, he's a 165, 74 kilo guy. So that's where I think it gets tricky for Duke's outlook is not this lineup, but next season's lineup.
Yeah, and again, they've to me, it's similar to the situation they have this year at 84 and 97, where you are going to have an elite wrestler, and I mean elite, like a guy that is right there in terms of national title contender that is not going to be in the starting lineup, and again, it is a nice problem to have, but it is a problem. I mean, to have, I can see coaches and other fan bases rolling their eyes. Yeah, that's a problem, but it is. I mean, obviously, because you want these guys to stay part of the program. You're invested in them. They're invested in the program. But it's tough when you're an elite talent to say, yes, I'm going to remain invested and this is where I want to be while I spend a year of eligibility not competing, at least in the varsity lineup. That's a tall ask of these guys. And again, probably at some point, at least a couple of these guys do transfer out. I think that's just kind of the nature of the game we're in these days with college sports in general, wrestling in specific, and the Penn State program even more specifically. But I also think there is a chance that some of these elite guys do stay and only compete for 2 or 3 years in the varsity lineup, and they're okay with that because they want to also continue their freestyle development and they like the program. I mean, I think that is a scenario that could play out here as well. And listen, the money may factor in here. I mean, there's a lot of different things that different guys are going to be looking for and their families are going to be looking for, depending on personal circumstances, depending on personal goals, depending on, again, their overall feel of the fit here. And, obviously there's a lot of other great programs out there. Most notably, you have David Taylor in Oklahoma State that are very familiar with a lot of these guys. And I'm sure they're waiting for the opportunity, if it comes about, to go ahead and take a couple of the guys that don't get into that starting lineup here in the coming years. But, we're just going to have to see how it all shakes out. And there's a lot of different factors that could come into play here. And, there's obviously no way to know the future. I don't have the crystal ball. It is an unbelievable situation that they have in that room right now, though, in terms of just the overall talent, top to bottom, both in the Penn State lineup. And then when you add in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club members and this coaching staff, I just, I think I've said this a couple of times on the podcast, but I just have never seen anything quite like this assemblage of people, like just good people, and this amount of wrestling talent in one room.
One of those talented members, Mitchell Messenbrink, has entered into what is the best rivalry in all of wrestling right now, college freestyle. We're going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Mitchell Mesenbrink has entered into a rivalry. It's back and forth. It began on the NCAA level when he came just short of defeating David Carr in that 165 final not too long ago. Then he defeats Mike Caliendo, but David Carr prevented him from the potential of being a four-time NCAA champion. Then he gets to exact his revenge, wins the U.S. Open, wins it decisively, techs David Carr, and then they get to Final X, and Messenbrink gets swept by Carr. Okay, so now we have a new wrinkle to all of this, and David Carr is going to be the rep. Messenbrink is the runner-up here, but he's still going to be second on the world team here, but that's not to Messenbrink's liking. And it was close. Oh, this was a Carr won 4-3 and then 4-4 by criteria. A little bit of controversy because of the danger, the dangerous call in that second match that prevented Messenbrink from getting a couple more points there. Probably would have taken that to match 3, where I think Messenbrink's conditioning would have ultimately won him there. But when all things were equal, Jeff, I do think that Messenbrink won that U.S. Open bout primarily, not entirely, but primarily on better conditioning, better stamina. And so when you don't go through the grind of a U.S. Open, a long tournament where you're wrestling all these different guys, and it's just one-on-one, guy versus guy. And David Carr showed that he is one of the few wrestlers, probably one of the only wrestlers, that can keep Mitchell Messenbrink's offense at bay when all things are equal going into a best of 3 like that.
Yeah, I think he was very well coached, very well prepared, and I think he executed the strategy about as perfectly as anybody could. To me, it was more a tip of the cap to David Carr and what he was able to do than it was any kind of an indictment on Mitchell Messenbrink and where he is at. I just think, again, David Carr knew exactly the game plan that he wanted to implement, and he went out and did it. And I think, if and when they meet again, it'll be Messenbrink's turn to make some adjustments here, and I have no doubt it is fun when you get to this level, and it kind of it's not a great exact comparison, but I kind of look at David Carr as like the Eli Manning to Mitchell Messenbrink's Tom Brady, where again, you give him credit in the 2 big situations here. David Carr has found a way to win, and you may, be scratching your head. You may not like the style or whatever. He's finding the way that he needs to win it. And I just think, he has a really quiet confidence about him. And I think it really does come from the preparation and knowing exactly what it is he's wanting to do and how he wants to go about it. And I just, again, I give him a lot of credit. I think I think the coaching battle there was really interesting, as well as the wrestler matchup. And I think, again, I think they are both going to continue to push each other to new heights. And I think Mitchell will become a better wrestler because of the experience there at Final X, both just overall. I think he's going to have better understanding of how he needs to go about enforcing his offensive firepower, even when somebody's goal is simply to slow that down. I think, again, he'll be better at creating his offense and adding even more variety to it. And, that's kind of it's the nature of the sport. I saw somebody somewhere, I think it was after the Duke win, posted that, the one thing about this sport is nobody is unbeatable. Whoever you think is unbeatable, there's somebody out there that is capable on a given day of beating you. And it's just a constant learning process in the sport. You're never, all right, now I know everything that there is. There's just always little adjustments you can make, either with your technique or just adding different elements to your game, learning a little bit on the defensive side, how to change things up against a given opponent. And I think that's what makes the sport fun, is even when you think how a bout is going to go, you don't really know until you see it unfold.
And that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, talking some more Penn State wrestling here with what happened at Final X. React to it accordingly. Maybe a little overreaction, but I think it is justified with the pedigree that PJ Duke, Marcus Blaze, and Masanosuke Ono are all walking in with to this Penn State wrestling room, but it's not that simple. So we're going to have plenty more conversations to unfold all of it. Jeff Byers, the voice of Penn State wrestling, joining me here on the show. Links to his work outside of wrestling will be down in the description. I encourage all of you to check them out. Again, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. Thank you to the everydayers out there for being subscribed to the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts, you can join them as well. Jeff, thanks for the time as always, and can't wait to talk some more Penn State wrestling in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Zach.